You've convinced me that a man could fly, and I've just been loving the character ever since. So I'm absolutely thrilled that he's back on the big screen, and I cannot wait for the movie and for everyone to see it. So you don't want to hear from me about this, though. You want to hear from the men responsible for this movie. We only have one chair, so they're all going to have to squeeze up, but we have the writer, we have the director, we have the producer, and we have the head of DC Studios all here. Ladies and gentlemen, please go completely crazy for James Gunn!
I guess this is my mic here, huh? Okay, I have a very loud voice, so, but this will help. Look at you, little crypto stuff, crypto backpack.
I love you, James.
I love you too. The Ehab Beachy Chris Pratt shirt. 500, this guy's not representing at all. 500 days of summer. Oh, but he's got slither, so yeah.
I feel like we're representing pretty well here.
Yeah, look at
how
that.
How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I feel good. I mean, you know, it's everything's been a little crazy because my schedule is I was in the Philippines, then I was in Rio, then I was in LA, now I'm here, then I go to Paris, then I go back to LA, then I go to China, then I go to New York. I don't know what time it is in the day. It's a crazy situation, but it's been really fun, and the coolest thing is people like the movie, so it's fun talking to people that have seen the movie, and finally I can talk about the movie itself instead of the idea of the movie.
Absolutely. Well, just to let you know, it's now 20:45 and it's about to be Christmas, so...
Yeah, that's what it feels like, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, you know, tell us about your relationship with Superman. What was do you remember, was it Christopher Reeve for you? Did you pick up a comic?
It was comics. It was the comics. I think that when I was, you know, very young, I learned to read on comic books, and there was a lot of, like, Donald Duck and, you know, Huey, Dewey, and Louie comics, the Beagle Boys, but there was also Superman. And, you know, when I read the comics as a kid, you know, I entered into a world of whatever it was, number 400 of Action Comics. It wasn't entering into a world where I saw the origin of Superman. It was entering a world where Superman was friends with other superheroes, and he lived in a world where there was, you know, giant robots and monsters and flying dogs and sorcery and, you know, science so extreme it seemed like sorcery. So really, when I started making this movie, one of the things I wanted to do was to recreate that feeling in cinemas that the comic books felt like to me as a kid.
Absolutely. That actually brings me to one of the audience questions that I had here, which was from Hassan Mohammed. Is he here? Hey, hiya. Beyond the fantastic cast we're going to see, which DC character are you most personally excited to see Superman share the screen with?
Well, it's definitely Crypto. But besides Crypto, I really am a big fan of Mr. Terrific, and I think Eddie Gathegi is so good and funny as Mr. Terrific that people love him, so I'm excited for people to see him.
Absolutely. So tell me about your process with this film, because I know that you turned it down at one point, and then even when you started writing the script, you weren't sure about directing. So when did it get its hooks in you?
Well, when I say I'm not sure about directing when I'm writing a script, it's a little game I play with myself. So I write a script, and I will only commit to writing the script when I first start doing it, because I may not feel like directing it at the end of the day, and it allows me to be freer and to write something that is more fun, but then I usually almost always want to direct it. So, but yeah, no. When I was originally offered to direct Superman back in 2018, and I said no. I was daunted by the task. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. Also, if you remember, there was like other stuff happening with Superman at the time, and they didn't want it to be. It was going to be politically messy. So I said no, and I took the Suicide Squad, which was more of a familiar type of group to me, which I'm glad I did. That was fun. But I kept thinking about Superman. I couldn't get it out of my head. How would I do it if I did it? What would that movie be like? How could I make it work for today's audience? How could it speak to people? And eventually started to think that maybe it was something I can do. So when they, reapproached me with the idea for writing Superman, whatever it was, 3 years ago, I said yes.
Okay, we've got a question here from Dean Dionysiou. Again, apologies for my pronunciation. You're known for giving underdog characters, not just Crypto, I guess, but
Yes.
You're known for giving underdog characters their moment. How do you apply that to someone as iconic and seemingly invincible as Superman?
Well, I think that, you're right, and that's one of the reasons why I was afraid to write Superman. I'm kind of known for taking characters who are kind of edgy and mean and off balance a little bit, and sort of we uncover them and we discover that underneath they're really good people. It's a thing I've done many times. But I think with Superman, I think in today's world that there is nothing edgier than being good-hearted and kind and looking out for people that need protection and saving lives, no matter who it is. So I think that there's something to me that felt very rebellious about Superman. And he is an insider, but he's also an outsider. He's an alien from another planet. He wants to be human, but he isn't. But he's also the most powerful guy in the world, and women love him, and he's so cool. And so he's really got like this mix of things. And I relate to that a lot. I feel like that. I feel like an outsider. But I'm the head of a studio, I'm a director, I'm successful at what I do. So it creates a weird feeling in a person that I thought maybe I could relate a little bit more to Superman than in the past.
And that goodness, is that the thing that sets Superman apart? I mean, not just the laser eyes.
I think it is. I think that in other times, people think of Superman as Pollyanna or too old-fashioned or too earnest, and I'm like, screw that. He is too earnest. That's okay. I wish we had more people that were too earnest in this world. It would be a much better place. And I love that he is like that. He's a square and he owns it, and that's cool.
So tell me about casting David Cornsweet for this
David
role.
is also a square. He listened. I'm like, we're sitting outside one day, like we were rehearsing a scene. We wanted to rehearse the shot where he's whistling in the snow because we were about to leave to go to Svalbard, which is actually the Arctic and is freezing. And I wanted to be able to get the crew to do it as quickly as possible. And so we were, working on that shot. And we had times as we were setting up, and I was like, David, what kind of music do you listen to? What kind of pop music? What kind of rock? Do you listen to rock? Do you listen to pop, alternative, punk? What do you listen to? And he's like, I listen to old jazz standards. American Songbook. I'm like, what's American Songbook? I think I'm I understand music, but I don't understand David Cornsweet music. So I think he's snapping his fingers in the kitchen to Dean Martin all the time. I think that's what it is.
Is he secretly like a singer? Are we going to see him in a musical in the future?
I think he might sing. I'm not sure. He can do everything else. And that's what it was like. I mean, I was so lucky because I saw him in, my friend Ty West made a movie called Pearl, which is a really good movie, right? And it's creepy and weird and cool. And I watched it right around the time we were about to start casting Superman. And there's a guy that plays the projectionist character in that movie. And I was like, that guy looks like if he put on a little muscle, maybe he could be Superman. So I jotted the name down and I sent it to John Papsadera, our casting director, and he called him in. And so David was actually the second audition I saw out of hundreds of auditions. And right away I was like, because I said to Peter Safran beforehand, if we don't find the right guy, I'm not going to make this movie. I'm not going to go out and fall flat on my face. And Paul Giamatti, he's a great actor, but he would look weird on the film. I feel weird right now sitting in front of you.
I would watch
Paul
that.
Giamatti, you would watch it. He would be good, right? He would still be good, but it would be a very different movie. My dog only barks at animals on screen, and Paul Giamatti with a beard. That's true. Anytime he sees Paul Giamatti with a beard, he barks at the screen. I don't know why that is. Anyway, I lost my whole train of thought. Anyway, David auditioned. He was great. He had the acting chops. He had the comedy chops. He was able to deliver the fast-paced dialogue in the way that I wanted. And then when we brought him in and we did all the stunt assessment, he was able to do all of the athletic stuff we needed because it's a really physically rigorous job being Superman, because we hang you and puppeteer you from all these wires. Like, people don't know, but almost all of the flying shots are real in the movie. He's not really flying. I mean, it's really his body, and we're puppeteering him, and then we put the sky and everything in the background.
Wow. That's incredible. You're talking fast-paced dialogue, and you also have Lois Lane in the movie. I mean, is this a sort of His Girl Friday?
It's totally
kind of
His
thing?
Girl Friday.
Amazing.
Preston Sturges, David Mamet, Aaron Sorkin. Like, that's, we have a conversation between Clark and Lois in the movie that happens about 15 minutes in, where we learn everything about their relationship. It's a 10-minute long scene between the two of them where we learn their views on the world, the state of their relationship, and just everything about them. And I knew for the movie to work, that scene needed to work. They needed to work not only as superheroes and icons, but as two human beings with a complex emotional journeys, And because this movie is about Superman, it's about the pyrotechnics and the flying dogs and the robots and the fight sequences, which I love. That's my favorite thing to do. But it's also about Superman's personal journey, which I thought was something that was important to set it apart from most of the other Superman movies, which is he, learned some things about himself, and he needs to reassess who he is, and he struggles with that, and that's the core of the movie.
Fantastic. Can't wait to see it. I wanted to ask as well about another piece of casting, which is Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah.
So rumor has it that he was up for Superman, right?
Yeah, that's not a rumor, that's a fact. He auditioned for Superman, and the whole time he was auditioning as Superman, so I'm watching, we screen tested. What we did was we brought in the 3 final Supermans and the 3 final Lois Lanes, and we mixed and matched them, and I shot them so I could watch it on, watch it in a theater, actual screen test, and we built a set and everything. And the whole time I was watching Nick on the monitor while I was directing him, I kept putting my finger over his hair and going, I don't think he's Superman, but I have another character he might be really good for. Yeah, he was really good. A lot of times people think that when you're auditioning and you're choosing an actor, you're choosing the best actor, but you aren't really. You're choosing the person that's best for the role. I like to say this sentence when I'm with David, because I go, and Nick is a way better actor than David. So, but it's not as funny if David's not here, then it just seems mean. But Nick was amazing, and I loved working with him. He just wasn't Superman as I conceived him. But I couldn't get it out of my head that he was Lex, and so I called him up shortly after, and I said, I know it didn't work out with Superman. He also auditioned for Batman a few years ago. He was final 2 for Batman and final 3 for Superman. I said, I don't want you to, I don't want to screw you up again, but would you consider being Lex? And it's like, I was so happy. His agent, Billy Lazarus, called me the other day, and he was like, I cried during the movie. It was so good, and thank you so much for giving Nick Hoult the role he was born to play. And he is really, really amazing in the movie.
But I wanted to ask about, there's been the idea sometimes in the comics that Lex might have been a hero had Superman not existed,
Yeah.
right? They're almost a kind of dark mirror, kind of twin relationship. So actually, casting from the same casting pool feels like a way of almost reflecting that.
It is. I mean, I don't, Nick doesn't outwardly seethe with jealousy towards David, but maybe inside he's trying to kill him. I don't know. That could be cool. That could be a movie in itself. But yeah, I think that my our Lex in this movie really is like, he's this guy who has helped humanity. He's a great scientist, and science is his love. And he's very, very competitive. So even though this is a world in which superheroes exist, he has worked so hard to be the greatest man in the world. And he was considered the greatest man in the world, even with other superheroes and Green Lantern and things like that, up until about 3 years ago when Superman showed up. And then his point of view, it's this guy in this silly costume coming with a square jaw and, dimples. And suddenly he's not the greatest person in the world. He's a distant second. And he's so overwrought with jealousy that he feels replaced, that he's almost turned his jealousy, his envy, into a spiritual quest to rid the world of Superman, believing he's doing something that's good for humanity.
Amazing, awesome. Was there a part of this, because you've, I think, even just judging from the trailers, you've folded in, you know, Superman / Clark's personal life, you've got Crypto, we've seen Man Pat Kent, we've seen the Dead Planet, we've seen monsters, we've seen aliens. You know, it's a lot. Was there something that you really had to kind of work to get in there that was more difficult to fold into the story than anything else, or was there?
No, I mean,
you
know, once I came, you know, I didn't originally have, when I was working on the story, it wasn't last minute. I mean, I started writing the script, but it was, the thing that got me was Crypto. Because I just adopted a dog, and his name is Ozu, and he's the worst dog who's ever existed. I told you he attacks Paul Giamatti, but he's much worse than that. If the only thing he did was attack Paul Giamatti, he'd be good, but he destroyed my entire house, like really. Ate my $10,000 computer, and it was constantly, he didn't know human beings, so he was scared of me because I rescued him from a hoarding situation. He was biting my feet till they bled every day, and I was like, well, every time I would, I walk around my house barefoot like a lot of people, so I'm walking around my house barefoot, and he's constantly coming and biting my feet as hard as he can. I'm like, I don't know if you are playing or you hate me or what, but it doesn't feel good. And I'd be on the phone so I couldn't scream, and so I would get up on top of like my kitchen counter and try to fold my legs up so I could continue my conversation with David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers, and all of a sudden I would look over and see him jumping up onto the counter. He really did. He destroyed everything. And I'm like, well, thank God he doesn't have superpowers. And that kind of hit home that I could put Crypto in there. And what would it be like if the world's, third or fourth most powerful being was a, 30-pound dog who was absolutely terrible. And he kind of became this, he kickstarted the movie. He became like this chaos agent that really helped to, take the movie in places where we didn't expect it to go because, dogs are stupid.
Dogs do that.
Yeah.
Especially yours. I have a question from Jane Lynn. Mine. Hi. Oh my God.
Oh, she's right in front.
Amazing. Could we ever see a Crypto and Eagly team up?
Honestly, I think Crypto would eat Eagly. By the way, Ozu yesterday attacked. My wife is in Atlanta, where our house is, and he attacked a deer yesterday. He's not that big, and he was biting the deer's leg, and the deer was squealing, and my wife had to go save the deer from my stupid dog. She said it was so cute. Not him attacking the deer, but the deer was cute, and she decided she never ran faster in her life. Yeah, no, he's really, he's a monster.
So he's toned down for the superhero movie version.
He is. Yeah. He would. There would be dead people everywhere. He would just be flinging people like zombies and I Am Legend.
Oh my God! I want to see that movie. Wow.
Yeah, a Crypto zombie movie. I think that might have more potential than a Crypto Eagly team up. I mean, Eagly's not so great either, but he's better than Crypto. He is vicious. Wait till you see him in season 2. Eagly gets his whole action sequence all to himself. That's a big spoiler for the crowd here. I bet you do.
What, by the way, did you have to work with Crypto on set? Did you make some models like you guys did for Rockets?
So the way we created Crypto is, number one, there's a company called Frame Store. They created Rocket Raccoon and a lot of my other characters, all the characters in Guardians 3. And we took Ozu and we put him in a room with 1,000 cameras, and we took a bunch of pictures of him, and then we did a 3D creation of Ozu. He's not white though, he's brown, so we turned him white and made him a little bit bigger than he is. And that was where we started with the 3D modeling. And then I have just hundreds of videos of my dog, like him biting Superman's feet at the beginning of the movie. That's him biting my feet. We have videos of him tackling my cat all the time. They actually love each other. It's like the one thing he likes in the world is my cat. My cat, who's 13 loves this dog, and she's been around 1,000 dogs, but they love each other and cuddle and attack each other all the time. I know, it's weird. He doesn't love me like that. And so I have tons of videos of them playing, and so that's what we used for like the beginning when he's tackling Superman. And so we used those videos for reference, and then we had a dog on set named Jolene, and she was a very nice, kind dog who was also very funny. Like one day I showed up to set and Jolene was just sitting in front of my trailer wearing sunglasses. No, I don't think she put them on herself, but I don't know. But Jolene was used as fur reference so that we knew how she had white fur and we would know how his fur interacted with the light. And then we had a bunch of petite women who were crypto on set, who, like my friend Murph, who is actually one of the characters in Guardians 3 in monster makeup, and does all sorts of stuff for me every time I'm in Atlanta. And Murph would like push, David around and bite his, well, she wouldn't really bite his feet. She would use her hands like, in case you tug on his cape or do all that sort of stuff. She's great.
Maybe. Well, I asked about that because somebody's asked about props and physical effects. Amber Rose Thompson? Yes, another person in the front row. They are very enthusiastic. As a prop maker in the industry and a massive fan, I've always loved, she says, how you champion practical effects. So was there a prop or a set piece in this film that you considered a favourite or one that particularly helped make the world feel real?
Well, everything in the fortress, we really built the Fortress of Solitude. So the roof is fake, but everything else is real. And we had tons of these like many 100-pound crystals that we made to put in there, and this dynamite computer that's, this Kryptonian computer that we had to design, which is really inspired by Frank Quitely's artwork from All-Star Superman. Yeah, he's like, Frank's really important. Frank and Grant and Jamie Grant, who did the colors on that comic, are all really important to this movie in terms of not our story, but the inspiration and the look of the movie, and also the way the characters are, the sort of, chest forward, square-jawed Superman, and the narcissistic Lex, and the intrepid but a little crazy Lois. And yeah, so I think that the first thing that comes to mind is that computer. But God, we had so much cool stuff on set, and it was so fun going from like these very real world, locations to the Fortress of Solitude or a pocket universe that we go into, or all these, just the contrast between those two things, which, in Guardians, I'm just used to everything being outlandish, and if you have a toaster in a scene, you have to take, 4 days to decide, well, does it toast bread or something? What does it, what does it look like? You have to design every single thing. And in this movie, it's really split between the two, and I feel like the jumping back and forth between very grounded real world and these crazy places was a lot of fun.
And you started off in Svalbard.
We started off in Svalbard, Norway. Yeah, our first day was shooting that shot that most people have seen from where we're pushing in on David. He had to lie in the snow. It was absolutely freezing outside. But he didn't have it as bad as Henry, his stunt double, who had to get dragged through the snow by Crypto, which was a sled. And so David got dragged too, by the way, just not as harshly as sorry, not Henry, Eddie's his name. Eddie, it was. But yeah, that was the first date, and we actually were really lucky because Svalbard is known for blizzards. Obviously, it's the Arctic, and we had 4 clear days, so I was only there half as long as I planned to be there. Yeah.
Awesome. What was the best surprise on set while you were shooting? Is there anything you sort of find in the moment, or just thought of on the day that ended up in the film that you can talk about? No spoilers, please.
There's little moments everywhere, but I'm for some reason my mind is going to performances like Sarah Sampaio, who's a model, and Eve Teschmacher was actually her and Mr. Terrific. Those were the 2 hardest roles to cast. I did 3 rounds of screen tests for Eve Teschmacher and couldn't find her. It just wasn't working. And then finally Sarah came along, and she's a model, so I didn't really, it's bad. I didn't take her seriously at first. And I didn't even barely look at her. I owe it to my wife, Jen, that she was sitting next to me as I was going through the auditions, and she's like, wait a minute, what about that person has something special about her. So I brought her in and tested her, and she's just so funny and amazing and alive in the film, and so great. And the same thing with Skylar Casando as Jimmy Olsen. The two of them are really like something special.
I love Skylar Gazondo. I was so excited.
He is really funny. He's funny in true life too. He's not as arrogant as Jimmy though, but yeah.
I've got a couple of questions looking forward here. So Dylan Rose.
That's me.
Oh wow. Hi Dylan.
Dylan loves being himself.
So, looking at Iron Man and Man of Steel as the beginning of their respective cinematic universes, they both approach the characters by making them more or less the first superheroes in an otherwise normal world. But you've decided to go in a world, obviously, as we've discussed, where superheroes already exist. So why that route instead? Why was that important?
I don't think there's anyone here who started reading. If you've read comics, I don't think anyone here has started reading comics and started at the beginning. We've all. I mean, I'm older than almost everyone in this room, and we all entered, in the middle of, these stories. That's the magical world that I love. But not only that, I love the MCU, and I love a lot of the stuff that was happening in the DCEU. But I also love, Star Wars and Game of Thrones, and I wanted to create a universe that was different from ours. One of the things I always liked about DC was it wasn't our world. It was another world. It was Gotham instead of New York. It was, Metropolis that instead of whatever. It was Evergreen and Star City and Central City and all of these different places it was like a fictional world. And so I wanted to create this other planet, this other reality. That's what I love doing, is that sort of world building. And it gives you the freedom to do anything. Like if you destroy New York in the MCU, it's heavy to destroy any city. But anything can happen in the DCU. We can destroy anything at any time. We could destroy a continent, It can happen. It gives you the freedom to do what you want, but it's also, I love the imagination of it. And I love the fact we're telling some stories that are going to be continuous over numerous, pieces of media. But also we're taking this big globe of stories over this big span of time, and we can pick any little piece out of it to tell any little story about any little piece of that. And this is just one of those pieces. This is just the first. Well, it's the second one, I guess. Creature Commandos. So it's the first movie piece, and I love being able to approach it in that way.
Thank you. What are
You're welcome.
insurance rates like in Metropolis? It feels like they would be real. The trailer, that building going sideways. I'm like, ooh.
It is, but I live part of the time in California, and we have fires and earthquakes, so it's about the same. There's not as many fires and earthquakes in Metropolis, just more kaiju.
Maybe just continuing on from that last question a little bit. Did you have to think about this much as the start of a new thing, as the start of a universe, or is this a little bit more, as you suggested, they're kind of detached or disconnected, so you can kind of hold
Well, it's not disconnected because, for instance, we have Rick Flag Sr. was Frank Grillo, and he was in Creature Commandos, and now he's in Superman, and he's pretty much the antagonist of Peacemaker Season 2. And you see his character change too. He's kind of a good guy in Creature Commandos, and this we're kind of like, I don't know. And then in the next one, he's not so good. He's Breaking Bad. I think that I'm aware of that, and I don't want to do anything to hurt the universe. But it'll always be most important to me, whatever is the story in front of me. Telling that story with authenticity and integrity and fun is more important than trying to build out a world. And I don't do anything in there that hurts that movie for the sake of something in the future, And I'm not saying I'll never have to do that, because I might. But in this movie, I refuse to do that.
So is this kind of scratched a Superman itch for you, or has it given you even more desire to keep going? I think people here are happy to hear that.
I didn't say anything. They're putting words in my mouth.
We're just looking at your face, man. It's telling a story. Listen, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. I think we're going to take a quick selfie with you guys if you're all up for that.
Yeah.
Woo! But before we do so, thank you so much, James Gunn.
really honestly, thank you all for coming out. You know, I really, we at the beginning of making this movie, you know, I sat. We had a cast and crew dinner the night before we started shooting, and the thing is we said at the end of the day, this is a movie about goodness, and it's such a rare thing to have that. And so I hope it speaks to people. I hope it speaks to you guys. I know the people that so far have really enjoyed the movie, but I hope it speaks to all of you. And I really am grateful to you guys all for coming down here and being here for this. And so thank you very much.